Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Once upon a time.
Yeah.
Once island.
You start with the history, I guess,
How far back are we going?
probably 1850.
I wasn't born.
No, but just back to show our history, I suppose. How long you been here?
I've been here since 1947.
That wasn't what I meant.
Oh, you meant King David?
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. King David was our great, so many
Something like
greats.
that. Yeah.
Rafi, my grandfather, George, David II, and King David. Only King David, because he had at least 24 children and possibly 27 by 2 or 3.
Wow.
You're part of it, yeah.
I'm part of it.
I think
I
so.
am.
Yeah,
My daughter is.
yeah.
We look alike.
Yeah.
King David, huh?
How many wives?
16 by the first, supposedly 3 by a wife before he ever got here, and then 16 by the first wife, and I know, and then he killed her off. No.
She died.
She died. Yes, she did.
Baby.
And then-
Suicide, probably.
6, and 6 by the second wife. Yeah, I'd have killed him. But. where
And
he
then,
was-
and both our
That's right.
mother's side, Smith, and Stinson, and my father's side, Staples and Joyce, were the original settlers, among the original settlers on the island. So we have a lot of people buried around here. Where all the graves are, I don't know. But they're
I'll
here.
show you. I've got the
But-
genealogy
Yeah.
shirt on.
But as Gwen said, oh, by the way, before I begin, I got to say that whatever Gwen says may not be true. We have memories, but they don't always coincide. So
Mine are right.
take mine as the true story, and hers is kind of a supplement.
Typical brother and sister.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but go ahead. You got anything to say?
Because you're going to correct me if I tell
I
you
am.
anything wrong.
She was, like she said, born in 47. And I was born over in Minton in 1949 in February.
And that bright blue house that's just turned blue.
Yeah, and my aunt was there, my mother, of course, and dad and a doctor. The dad was applying the ether and almost ran out. And I came into the world close to 13 pounds.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. And it took mom 13 years before she had another baby. So, but the island life for us started right after World War II, of course. Everybody, the soldiers are coming home. The population was increasing fast. My grade school class had 21 kids in it. Just that class alone. Greg,
It's a lot.
yeah, being among them. Jean,
Was Susan Smith a part of
Yeah.
that class?
Susan Smith
Danny
should,
Spriggs,
Danny
Danny
Sprague.
Spriggs.
Susan Smith should not have been a part of that class, but
That's right.
because they didn't want her to be alone, I guess, so they
Yeah.
brought her in,
Yeah, younger, but they pushed her ahead.
and she did well. Yeah,
Very.
yeah. So we were born into the island during the time of extreme patriotism and loyalty to the community. The men and women looked after all of us, and no matter where we were on the island, we were taken care of. The people in Atlantic and Minton and the village, the harbor we called it, even though during the very early years, they were somewhat separate communities under the caption of Swan's Island. They were somewhat isolated in the winter, but as time grew and automobiles came about, brought on, then the island started to intermingle more. And so by the time I was born, where's Jean again?
Beside
Oh, there you
Greg
are.
there.
Jean Rehnquist with her gaggle of sisters were my neighbors across the street. I was the only boy in, how many girls, Jean?
Well, we had 5.
And
Dolores
Dolores, yeah,
Gwen and Jackie.
yeah. And so there I was. And it was a traumatic childhood. But they treated us well.
Where did you live?
We lived in the blue house,
You did, okay.
Yeah. and I guess that's what it's going to be called from now on.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Jared.
And here comes, he was much younger. This is Leslie. Hi, Leslie. He was much younger than I was, so he wasn't really a male in the community for quite a while. Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know where to go from this point, Gwen. Got any ideas?
Oh, I thought of something, but you know how those thoughts go.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to school?
We both went up here, up to the post office, town office.
But your first year was over here on the store.
Part of it was up here at the harbor,
Mine was too.
right across from the
Yeah.
cemetery.
With the outhouse, do you remember the outhouse?
I remember the outhouses, 2 hallways down to the 2 separate outhouses. But I have found out in recent years that the boys drilled a hole in the wall so they could look into the girls.
They did.
I was not one of those boys.
You have this whole thing going on. in
Yeah.
Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever play with the kids on the Harvard side?
We did, but not as often as you might think. We lived in Minton, and then when I was 10 years old, we moved over to Atlantic. Well, Lester Stanley just now. But we would sometimes, play around, but I didn't come to the harbor to play hardly at all. We had so much to do in our own communities. It was, even though I was surrounded by girls, I had a great time and had no need to go out and find the guys on the other side of the island. Besides, getting there until they got bicycles was not that easy.
That's true.
You took your,
Walk.
had to walk.
But
Yeah.
we visited with our grandparents. Rich was right behind us, Brian. And I.
Yeah. We would go over there and visit. Of course, went to school with them and had a great time that way. But as Gwen was saying, she went to that school up here for a few years before they tore it down. And the
Half a
Swan
year.
Island
half a
Consolidated
year.
School, half a year. Swan Island School was built. And then the schools in Atlantic turned into the Swan Island Library. And then the one in Minton was torn down probably in the late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah.
No, was
My
it?
wedding reception was there and it was a 62.
Is that right? Yeah, yeah.
You was not a social person as far as going to social events.
No, not particularly.
That Minton School was the place for socials.
Yes, we used to have, I remember some of those socials. Yeah, bobbing for apples.
Nancy Bacon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Musical chairs,
Clap in, clap out.
clap in, clap out. I remember
I don't
that.
remember that. No, but it was,
The Christmas the all island Christmas parties were there.
mhm.
Yeah. It was
They had that picture window kind of type thing. You remember when your father had a all the gum that he'd been chewing for days, I guess. Do you remember that? It was some kind of movie thing. He was in there chewing his gum all over everywhere.
Mhm.
Supposed to be some kind of comedy thing, I guess.
Oh, it was part of the play. I thought he was just doing it because his dad. It was at one of those events, the car tipped over on the way home.
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
Black ice.
Only going 20, 25 mile an hour. It's going up past, coming back toward the crossroads, but by the Advent Church in Minton, and just hit a little, just going slow. Some ice, the car spun around, went up on its side. The man came by, put it back up on its 4 wheels, and Dad drove it home. Yeah, and I lost my Tinker Toys that day. I remember that. But
I screeched and hollered because I was
Yeah.
scared and you were saying, look at those wheels, Daddy, look at those wheels. They're still spinning.
they were.
You got out.
Yeah. But I think maybe one of the things that I can speak about that most people don't have experience with is my father was the road commissioner on the island. He plowed the roads, he maintained the roads, both state and town roads. And had a lot of early experience working on those roads with him. One of the earliest ones, of course, was being with him when he would plow the snow in the wintertime, and the winters were brutal back then. There were snow drifts 6-7 foot high, and he had an old 1953, I think, GMC truck, town truck with a V plow on front, wooden V plow. Before every storm came, he would bring in some paraffin wax, melt it down on the stove, and put it over the wood so that the snow would slide off it easy. And everything was crank. The plow cranked up, the wing cranked down, no power steering in the truck, mechanical brakes, and he would break universal joints that connected the engine to the differential on a regular basis because the truck was undersized, and he'd put chains on it, and the chains would cause extra slippage, some erratic slippage, and it would snap that universal joint. So I remember many a day being under this truck at a very young age, changing universal joints with him, getting the truck back on the road. But we would back up and slam ahead and back up and slam ahead just to get that V plow to go through the snow. One time, and I mentioned this in one of the stories that I wrote, it was a terrible storm, 1960, probably 63-ish, 4 maybe. And every night, George Tainter, who took care of the power plant over in Benton by the quarry wharf, had to go over around 10 o'clock to put the generators in night mode. And he had to go over in the morning and put them in day mode. Whatever that sequence was, I don't know. But Dad had to keep the road clear to get Georgie over to the power plant. And this one night, it was a terrible storm. Dad had been out plowing all day. The snow was still going horizontal. And he had the responsibility of getting that road open for Georgie to do his duty. Dad had a very, very strong sense of community service and responsibility for whatever he did. So he was going out that night regardless of the weather, regardless of the condition, and regardless of what Mom said. And Mom said no. And she said it emphatically and often. And he finally gave into it when she said, we're all going. So that was Gwen, that was me, there was how old was Lottie? An infant.
1.5 years. So,
Yeah, just really, really young.
62 probably.
And Dad in the front seat of a truck that probably couldn't hold 3 people. And we pulled out, he backed the truck in that night, knowing getting out would be difficult. And he went out. And this is, if you know where Lester Stanley lives now, it's, I can only refer to it as beyond the central office and down in the valley before you go up to Billy Banks' place up on the hill where he keeps his trucks. That wind comes right through. But anyhow, we came out of the driveway, right across the road and right into the ditch on the other side. And all we could see of the house was a little dim light in the snow because the snow was so dense and so strong. And we got out of the truck, Dad, we had to get back. We got out of the truck. Dad was in the lead. Mom grabbed Dad's belt. Gwen grabbed Mom, and I grabbed Gwen in the back, and Mom was holding the baby. And we leaned into the wind and snow and made it back home. But that's the way the weather was back then. And every winter there were storms like that. And he'd spend hours upon hours. One time after a winter storm, I was probably 12 or 13. We were plowing down around the point. And if I name some places, it's probably old. So anybody who knows the current name, let me know.
Point is Minton.
Going down around the point, down past where the old post office used to be, and going up towards Murdoch's Wharf. And
Just Grafton's.
we were sanding. And back then, we would load the back of the truck with sand, dirt, and that had been sanded early. And I'll go through that maybe later on. And we would go out and lift the body up and feed the sand down through a little square hole in the back of the tailgate down onto a circular spreader. So it just spread the sand out all over the road. And we went around that point, and Dad had the truck up a little bit too high. and the telephone wires were hanging a little bit too low. And they caught the truck body, dumped it up, and it went vertical, and I was in the back.
Yeah.
And I caught my balance on the tailgate. And of course, Dad expected to see me laying on the ground dead. But I caught my balance on the tailgate, and the telephone pole flew in the back with me, right next to me. And at that time, we got it all straightened out. At that time, my grandfather, Dad's father, owned or was part owner of the telephone company. I don't know the conversation that they had. Dad pulling down 3 poles and having to go to his father and tell him that, hey, Dad, I screwed up. But no, it wouldn't be the first time either. No, but we would spend hours upon hours upon hours going up to the dirt pits and basically sifting the rocks out of the sand to get gravel to put on the road in the wintertime and mix it up with rock salt and spread it to keep the roads clear. That was hard work. That was
Did you
really
get
hard
paid, Clint?
work. For most of that, yes. Sometimes, most of the time, I didn't like when he would say, "There's a storm coming, we gotta go fill the truck up." And what he meant by that is that I had to grab a shovel and go up to the dirt pit, and the stuff that had been screened was already set there. So just shovel the truck one shovel full at a time. Yeah, and get the weight in the back of it. And hard work. So I grew up and left the island. Couldn't handle that island life anymore. But there's an awful lot to talk about, I guess, Gwen, but you're not saying much.
You're saying it all, I can't interrupt.
Yeah.
I was thinking about when the power came, it was 1949 when it came, and I have read a relative's, I don't know what she is to you. Yeah, Dora Stinson,
My great aunt.
great aunt, yeah, okay. Found her diary, I think I sent it to you. She said, I've had, the electricians over and they've wired my interior or whatever, and then she'd write in the diary, the next day, there have been so many houses illuminated. And then the next day would be 4 or 5 more, or 5 or 6 illuminated. She could probably see the whole harbor because of where she lived, which was near the Chapman's.
2 houses over from the top of Steamboat Hill.
Right,
As you drive up, it's the house.
that's true. Hostetler House.
It's
Yes, okay. So during that time, and this has taken me years to get this all through my head, Dad, and I've got to tell this, I've told it 100 times, but I just get such a kick out of it. It's basically would be called gossip, but it was true. It was true. Dad went out to holiday on their 5th anniversary, the day before Christmas. We were tiny, and she didn't want him to go because he was going with Uncle Carol Staples, the old uncle, not the old Carol Staples, not the young one, and knew they'd be probably having a few drinks. And she said no.
It was their anniversary.
And he went. In the afternoon, he got his fingers caught in the winch.
Boy, how you doing? I haven't seen you in a while.
I haven't seen you forever.
save your seats, Mantis, out there.
I can sit down.
There you go.
He got his fingers caught in the winch.
Between the rope and the winch when you're pulling the strap up.
On the top of the wheel.
Yeah.
And Carol said, he got on the radio because there wasn't phones in the boats anymore at that point, I should say. And he said, if anybody that's out here has a ship to shore radio, which is what they called them, he could call anywhere, I guess.
Mhm.
I don't know what they would call that for. Could you get a hold of Melita Staples and tell her that Bud has lost his hand?
Actually, it lost his fingers.
He just lost the tip of these 2 fingers.
Yeah.
Still, he had a fingernail, I think, most of his fingernail. So Marguerite called Mom in the afternoon and she said, Bud has lost his arm and he's on his way to. And that's the God honest truth. Yeah, so I can remember, And I didn't realize, I used to think, why was he in the dark in front of the old black stove that was our heat with his hand in the Epsom salt bowl on the back of the stove? Night after night, he'd be sitting there with his hand in it. We didn't have power. It took me a long time to figure that out. So we got our power in 51.
And we saw our very first color TV
Oh,
in 54, 55, I think it was.
saw it, but didn't get one.
No, we didn't get one.
No.
Carol, Uncle
Car-
Carlisle.
Carlisle Staples. Was
No, Carol
it?
Staples.
It was Uncle
It was
Carol.
Carol. Yeah, Uncle Carol had it. And we would go over to his house and watch Bonanza. Big event. That was the first color thing on TV.
In the 50s? Yeah, because the TVs only had
Color,
like
yeah.
6x6.
Yeah, it was the late 50s, I think. Yeah.
Very snowy at times, if I remember.
Yeah, it was, but it was nice. And sometimes it was green, red, and yellow, but it was still color TV. Yeah.
And then whenever Dad decided he wanted colored TV, I shouldn't go off on these personal
Mhm.
memories, but
Oh, yeah.
Mom said no. And he comes in with an Easter lily, and she said, "What have you bought, Mark? You're not supposed to now." And it was a colored TV.
Yep.
She was so against it that she had hers, and hers was on top. He had his color on the bottom. She watched the top, same show.
Black and white.
Black and white. She kept that for a long time.
Yeah.
So stubborn. I wonder where she got that, where I got that.
Did they watch the same show?
Yeah, same show. She probably was watching it, but she wasn't gonna give in. She was gonna be watching that black and white set on top. Oh, God.
These pictures over here, one of them is one of my favorite. And it's this one right here.
Yeah.
The automobiles was a part of my early life because Dad was the road commissioner and he had vehicles all over the place. Where guys over in the harbor had their boats and I had my trucks and cars to play with. As I wrote in one of my little stories, one of my first vehicles was an old truck that Dad had and abandoned on the backfield. So I just kind of stole it from him and put a battery in it and got it running. And that's Vaughn Hopkins in that picture. And we rode that up and down the field forever. And
What was it?
it was an old early 30s something truck. I don't know what it was. It was just something that I thought had been in World War II.
Yeah.
But somebody mentioned earlier, how did we work on cars? How did we repair them? And Dad had a great memory of where everything was hidden on the island. He would know where any car was, what part would fit which car. And I'd say, "Dad, I got a bad bearing on the differential on my car. It's making a lot of noise." He says, "Go see George Stanley. He's got that old Ford out back. It'll probably fit this." And sure enough, you go over, you take the piece out, put it on, and away you go. Across the road from us when we lived in Atlantic was Buddy Mountain. He had, I don't know how many cars on the back of his house, dozens and dozens of cars back there. And I'd go over to Buddy's and I said, "Look, Buddy, I got this bad starter. It came off my old Dodge or whatever." And he'd say, "Yeah, go out back and take it up." And sure enough, so that's the way I kept my cars going. And I had several of them. And that one right there was a 39 Plymouth that I bought for $5. And I don't think I had a driver's license. By the way, driver's licenses were not required when we were young. Every island kid, I think, was well versed in driving well before they got their driver's license. All of us would sit in our father's laps and drive and get feel, and then after a little while later, in the driveway all alone, and then before you know it, you're going down the road. But that old car right there had all of its fenders on it and all of its engine hoods and everything. But being the teenager that I was, I decided that I didn't like them. It wasn't needed. They didn't serve any purpose. So Vaughn and I made that car into the little a little off-road buggy and went up into the woods and drove them all over the pulp roads and had a good time. And my life was around vehicles like that, broken or soon to be broken. And never bought a new part at all. As a matter of fact, my graduation present from high school was 4 new tires for my 1957 Chevy.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh, gee.
yeah. And it was well received. I like that because I changed tires all the time. Flat tires, ran on ball tires. And once again, if a tire got beyond fixing, I'd just go find one off some junk car somewhere. As long as it held there, it was fine. It was fine. Yeah.
Paul Stockbridge changed 51 tires one summer.
I can believe that.
Spencer went through tires a lot.
Did he?
I did.
He says gleefully.
My father mentioned graduation. That's what I got for graduation in 1972 when I graduated high school at Higgins. The old man bought me brand spanking new set of tires for my '66 Pontiac.
Yeah.
And a week later, the rare ones were bald. And I guess I kept on stepping on accelerator.
More than likely, yeah.
So the old man says, those tires are about 2 weeks old. Why is she so bald on the rear? I said, I think she's out of line.
On the rear. Yeah, yeah.
Well, you didn't tell about our grandfather, who was Herman Staples. He was the sheriff on here, and he did driver's licenses. And I'm sure, yeah, many stories I've heard. I got mine you was too young.
No, I got mine on the mainland.
Yeah. I went down to his house and he said, let's go out and get your sister Lottie. I said, okay. Up we went. Mom must have been with us, backed out into the road, which I don't think I was supposed to do. He said, what do you do when you come to a stop sign? Stop. Okay, get your license.
Or he'd say to somebody, I've seen you driving around all the time. Here's your license.
What about yours, Nancy? Your experience getting
I went over to your grandparents' house and he got in the car with me. We went all the way down to Clyde Torrey's.
Oh,
wow.
Was about a half a mile.
Yeah.
I drove in, backed out, come off, dropped him off, and he gave me my license.
He didn't even ask you a question.
I was 15 years old when I was working on the road with Dad and driving his grader and couldn't drive the truck because it didn't have a license, but I could drive a grader. But he needed a truck driver. And I could drive a truck. I certainly knew how to. I certainly did, but I couldn't do it on the state roads without a license. So my grandfather, that she said, was he was a sheriff and they gave licenses and so forth on the island. So he called up Ellsworth and said, my grandson needs to get his license before his 15 and a half year birthday, which is what the age was at the time, 15 and a half, and get your license. So I got my license before I was supposed to and was driving a truck at 15 and a half on the roads here. But it was not uncommon for most kids who worked with Dad at 15 or 16 years old, building the roads, maintaining the roads, to be put into the truck and Dad would say, meet me over at the dirt pit. And the guy would have a basic idea of how to use it, but learned on the way. He was really good that way. Yeah, a lot of people have complimented him on his way he handled his young crew. But so we would take the trucks and drive them as fast as we could. Hope that they held together. Hope we had flat tires so we didn't have to work. And back to the screening, the gravel, the sand for the roads. It wasn't brought on from mainland, and no dirt pit on the island had pure sand. It was all dirt mixed with all kinds of other stuff, big boulders and stuff. So we had to take a screen that was kind of triangular with a screen on the slope side And he'd lift that up with a power shovel and stick it on the back of the truck. And we would stand down below it and pound with a nice piece of birch or something like that, pound the bottom of it to keep the weeds and the roots and the big rock from sticking to it. And that rock, the rocks would fall. We didn't have any hard hats, and we still the rocks would fall down past us, and the dust and everything. It was a job that none of us wanted to do. It was terrible, nasty. But we had to do that for mixing the tar when they come on to do patchwork, and we had to do it when for stockpiling the sand to put on the roads in the wintertime. So there was a lot of work, hard manual labor that went into it.
And when the oil, I know they used to oil the roads.
Yes,
And throw sand on top of that. too.
that's right. Yeah.
Did a number on your fenders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the sound. Tick, tick, tick.
He'd call mom and say, come on up, drive over this packet now.
Yeah.
Too bad they wouldn't do it now. These culverts were going across the
I
island.
know.
That's a mess.
Yeah.
Where's Bud when we need him?
Yeah. Yeah. The ditches were all cleaned by hand. No
Yes.
power equipment back in those early days. Had a crew that go out and do it. It was amazing that the amount of work that they got done with just manpower, no machinery to speak of. Dad got the first backhoe on the island. I don't know what year it was. Uncle Merrill, my mother's sister's husband,
Merrill Lockett.
Merrill Lockett, had a power shovel. I'm not so sure what year he got that, probably in the late 50s. But it was just a scoop and dump it in the truck, a scoop and dump it in the truck. It was hard to do the ditches with it. Dad bought what was called a hop toe backhoe that sat on the back of what used to be a truck of some sort, bolted it on, and it didn't have any outriggers to stabilize it. So if you reached over sideways, the whole thing would go that way. So he had to be real careful about how he would dig. And I remember being with him more than once, and he would have either something heavy in it, and it didn't take much, and swing the boom around, and it'd fall up on the side and knock him off.
Oh, gee.
And he'd get back on and do it all over again. Yeah. But then he bought himself a regular backhoe. And that was where my job got a little bit easier because no more manual labor, or less manual labor.
And you didn't put it on a truck to haul it from one part of the island.
No, you
You
didn't.
drove it.
Drove it, yeah.
It was big.
Yeah. That's right. You drive it, or he would take the front bucket, put it over the tailgate of his truck and tow it that way. And of course, when you took off, that bucket would slide back and slam against the back of the tailgate. And when you stop, the backhoe would slide forward and slam into the outside of the tailgate. So you went across there. But that reminded me, Greg, of I was probably 16 years old, and Dad needed his grader. He had an old Huber grader, which was one where you'd stand up and steer it, and had a hand clutch and a shifter over, a hand clutch over here, a shifter over here, throttle over here, and a foot brake. So you were going every which way and not knowing how to do much of anything. You grabbed something, hope it was what you needed to grab. But I was going across the island one time on it. He had to have it over this way for some reason. And I was coming up past the Oddfellows Hall, come to this corner, and I met Uncle Merrill right on this corner up here. Oh, by the way, and I should mention too, that it had about 4 steering knuckles from the steering wheel down to the actual device that caused your wheels to turn a little bit. And each one had wear. So there was about 2 turns in either direction before you actually started to get the wheels to turn. So I came around that corner and there was Merrill. So I overcorrected and I went right off and went right over the top of Delhi Bridges well.
Oh.
Right over the top of it, and right out into the field. And I was bouncing, standing up, trying to maintain my balance, getting that wheel going both ways. And finally got it straightened out. But you can do that now. You can put a 15, 16-year-old kid onto a vehicle like that and send him across the island. And then there was a time that, well, I wrote about this and Kim wrote about it, in response to it was that, we were building, taking the sharpness out of a corner down by Kim's house. And, Dad told me to, get into his truck and go over to the house to get probably a drill bit or something, because they were doing a lot of blasting. And Dad would set the dynamite, we drilled the holes, he'd set the dynamite, no license required, anybody could do it. And so I went over, and this was after hearing lesson after lesson of how dangerous dynamite was. And I got in Dad's truck, and as I was known to do, I went relatively fast, and the truck bounces all over the place, but that's okay. And I got over there, got what I was after, a drill bit or something, and I came back. And Dad said, now get up in the truck and hand me the dynamite. There was dynamite in the back of the truck, and that stuff was sliding all over the back end. Probably wouldn't have gone off, but still. And he kept the dynamite. He couldn't carry it on the ferry, so I brought it in the skip across the bay a lot of time. I had somebody else to bring it across the bay. And you're not supposed to keep your dynamite and the caps in the same vehicle. At least that's the way it used to be. And so he'd put the caps in the bow and the dynamite in the stern. And the boat was only 10 foot long, 10 horsepower motor on the back of it. And he'd bring that dynamite in, and right outside of the shed of the house, because the way the house was set up, we'd drive in. There was a big shed door right there. You walk in through the shed door, and to the right was an outhouse that was attached to the shed, and there was a little area where we had a green box that used to keep my great grandfather's blacksmithing tools. And but Dad had long since gotten rid of those, and he kept the dynamite in there right outside the shed door. And the caps, I think he kept in the glove compartment of one of his trucks. Mom didn't like that, of course, so she had to move them. So he took the dynamite out of there and put them in a abandoned truck out back of the house. So the way things were done back then, really callous, really quite different than what it is now.
Dad was callous. Say it.
Dad was callous.
Dallas. He was the callous one.
I thought he was just being funny. He was great.
He was funny.
He was funny.
Yeah.
You never knew.
Yeah.
I was gonna talk about what we used to do as kids.
Go for it.
Back.
You are much older than I am, so you have a better memory than that.
Better memory? Oh, good.
I'm not gonna
Then
remind
I'm
you.
right.
No. What's on your list?
We played hopscotch. I mean, Jean was there at every
Yeah.
event. We
Right in the
played
middle of the road.
right in the middle of the road. We played jump rope, Bailey. We played, oh, it's the other thing I just have to think of, it just went through my head and right back out. Camps in the woods.
That's a problem.
Well, yeah, and I can't tell that story to the public. That's not so nice.
Oh, that one. I was thinking about the other one.
Oh, the one that
The
you
one
wrecked.
that
that you
I
wrecked.
tore the camp down.
No.
Yeah.
I can say that we
Yeah.
girls had a camp and found some very graphic couples on the back of these playing cards that were left in our camp, this young girls' camp. We knew who it was, but it wasn't Mom mad. Woo!
Yeah.
We went swimming every summer, the quarry pond without fail. Rain or shine, didn't matter. And there was always people there.
Yeah, big crowd.
Yeah. I think, yeah, there's a picture of five of us up on the ledge at the quarry pond. Yeah, that was our,
Did you bathe and wash your hair and stuff there?
oh, yes.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, on the flat rock outside of the,
The water was crystal clear.
it was,
Yeah.
it was really good. You used what was the shampoo that floated?
Bro.
No, not the shampoo, the soap,
Aubrey.
ivory soap.
Yeah.
Would float, that was and we still smell like quarry pond water. We'd go to the dances all dressed up, we'd all smell alike.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had pop guns, you and I.
Yeah, we shoot flies. Probably Peter would get after us now for doing that. But
The
we
dark
caught the
guns.
flies.
I don't remember. I don't know if you do. When we shot those flies on the living room wall, did we then lap them again and shoot again?
Those were the dot guns,
Yes.
probably,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
probably.
Could have spit on them, but I doubt it. We'll probably just lapped and shot.
Yeah.
We've got pretty good shots.
Yeah, we were. We killed a lot of flies that way.
Which is good. We went to the 4th of July dances, night before the 4th.
Yeah.
And yeah, Yeah.
The night before the 4th was always an event on the island, because they had the dance, but there was also pranksters that would go out. And the people I won't name would take somebody's punt off the mooring or off the wharf and take it, put it up into a pond. Leslie probably was involved in that once or twice. Outhouses upside down. That was your specialty, Les?
On the crossroads is
Yeah.
what I remember.
Yeah.
That's what they would,
Yeah,
they would take them and put them on the crossroads. So
Yeah.
they'd get up in the next morning and see
yeah, yeah,
whose outhouse was over there.
yeah, I know.
Was it Hans Beret that was in his outhouse when they tried to, Lottie and probably,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Jerry were probably involved in that.
Right. It was Jillian and Dusty that took all of the rowboats.
Oh, they took the.
Yeah, and the last one they put on the flagpole down in the town office. And the father that night said, I'd like to know who did all of that.
Yeah.
I could see her flinch.
I never done any of that.
No,
Oh, right, yeah,
too busy squealing his tires.
going up to the dump and getting things and setting them up on the crossroads, yeah. Oh,
Gwen
toilet paper all around everywhere.
Gwen mentioned the quarry pond and going up there and swimming. I don't know, probably they don't still do it, but there was kind of unofficial areas up there where the guys would go and change into their bathing suits and the girls would go and change into theirs. And that was, we could hear the girls giggling over here and the boys over there. I don't know, I'm not guilty of this, but I don't know if any boys tried to go over that way. Probably not. Knowing that. But my habit, not my habit, but my procedure was when I got through working on the road, because I was dirty and dusty and everything, and I would keep my bathing suit hanging over my car antenna. That's where it dried, that's where it hung, all summer long. So at the end of the day, I get in my car, I go over and I pick Bonnie up, which is Greg's cousin and my distant cousin. And we go up to the pond and change and we'd go swimming. I'd get my Ivory soap.
Yeah.
One time I did that. It wasn't with Bonnie, it was with Chris Geffert. And went up there and it was I had already graduated from high school. I was waiting for the draft to go into the military, and I went up to the pond and Chris was with me, and I wanted to run and jump in the water, but it was a nasty day, rainy. And I stopped just before I got to the edge of the little cliff, and I slipped and I fell and bounced my butt on the rock I was running on and on the one down below. And when I came out of the water, my hand was up here and my wrist was down there. And I told Chris that I think my wrist was out of joint. She says, no, it's not, it's broken. So at that time I had a 57 Chevy where I had wanted to put a floor shift in it instead of something in the column. So I went on to J.C. Whitney and I bought myself a 101 combination floor converter kit. So I cut the hole in the floor and I put the shifter in, and I could only get first and reverse on the floor and second and third on and the starter solenoid had broken, so you put the key in and you turned it all the way and it wouldn't do anything. So they'd taken a light switch out of Dad's garage shop and I installed it under the dash. So get this car running was a trick. So there I was, broken arm, and Chris sitting over here, and I was having to give her instructions on how to get it started and how to shift it. I said, I put it up into this and soon as I put the clutch in, you pull it down here, and you grab that one and pull it down there. But it was a process. And then from the house, when I walked into the house and told them that I broke my arm, which was obvious, Dad got me in the car. This was also the 4th of July, the 3rd of July, because Chris had come up to spend the 4th of July with us. And we went down to Helen's, the island nurse,
Helen,
Kent.
Irene.
Irene, thank you.
yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, I know it's wrong. Thank you, Spencer. Irene Kent. And she gave me a shot of what, I don't know, but it was awfully good. So nice. And so I spent a couple of days in the hospital, and Chris, I guess she had a good time. 4th of July.
shouldn't have
I
been
wasn't
showing
here.
off for
Huh?
her. You were showing off.
I was. I paid the price.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like when you dumped your bike in California.
Oh, yeah, that's a different story. That's not growing up on Swan, though.
Oh,
That was
that's
being stupid. Stupid in California. Yeah. So what else is that, Gwenny?
You want to talk about when you pounded my head into the floor, into the tire? Pushed me
That's
off
a
my
story.
bike.
She pushed me off my bike.
I swear with everything in me that he pushed me off my bike.
And me, that she pushed me off mine. So we've had this
Have no
ongoing
way to
argument
settle it.
forever. No, there's no witnesses. I do want to mention,
You know, shoot. Yeah,
What's
she's
that?
bleeding,
I don't remember.
no,
bleeding the fifth.
I do just remind me of being in Minton and living across the street from Jean and her crowd. We had milk delivered to the house. There was a guy down in Atlantic, Sherman Joyce. He had a couple of cows, and he had a few select customers on the island at the time. And he would deliver milk around, and every couple of days. I don't think he did it every day at our house, but he'd come by in his truck, go real slow. And Jean was telling her part of the story of hopping on with him and riding in the back of his truck down to the point, right? Yeah,
Stop at the store and you buy us a Tootsie Roll.
prying you girls. This old man driving a truck, yeah. Yeah,
When he left them with mom, she put the dime. It was must have been a dime a quart. Put the dime in the bottle. So when he came back and swapped them out, that was his pay. Next day, when he delivered, whenever the dime was still in the bottle, the bottom of the bottle.
yeah,
Gross.
yeah, yeah.
He's a good old man
Was
now.
he the one, Billy Banks's mother's house? That
Yeah.
barn there?
Yeah. That was I wrote about this, great place to explore when I was a kid. Sherman was an entrepreneur for sure. He was a farmer. He had the nice barn, he had the horse, he had the cows. And across the street, he had an old sawmill. And that old sawmill, I imagine pieces of it are still there. And as a kid growing up and playing around that thing, pulling on those levers and making believe that I was a great forester, which, by the way, I got an associate degree in forestry a couple of years later. But he unknowingly gave me a lot of pleasure. You know, all
He
the
was,
stuff
he was
that we could.
also the Iceman.
He was the Iceman, yeah. Yeah, there was a pond out back of his house over there in Atlantic. And it was the ice pond. We always refer to it as the ice pond. He had built a big barn next to the pond. And when I was growing up, going in there and playing around and spying on his stuff, there was still ice hooks, axes, augers, all still inside there. A lot of sawdust still laying around, probably from his sawmill up across the street. And he would have enough ice stored throughout the winter. But nowadays, you can't even get enough ice for an ice cube out of the ponds around here anymore, from what I hear.
That pond is filling in with cattails
Yeah.
too.
Is it? Yeah.
Did he have an airplane? There was an airplane over there stored for years.
No, that was Roger's plane, probably.
In the 80s.
Was Roger.
Did he keep it over there?
Yeah.
He built
There's an
it.
astronaut out back there.
Ah,
He and Billy Banks
Oh,
and
no.
Bill and Roger had an agreement, and Roger built it on his land and flew in and out of there for how long?
What?
laying on my back.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's right, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So what would happen to you two if you got in trouble with your parents? What was your punishment?
Oh, we didn't.
You didn't?
uh,
They didn't mom haul it.
no, it was always wait till your father gets home type
Oh,
of thing.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Dad never punished us.
He
to
was
speak
too
of.
gentle.
He was a gentle guy.
He would say it would hurt me more than you.
Mom was a disciplinarian, kind of, when she bothered to pay attention to us, but she was busy. She was a gossip. She loved to roam. But what was I going to say about that? Oh, yeah, punishment. Yeah. Again, Greg's dear cousin Bonnie was part of my problem.
Blame it on the girl.
Yeah, we loved to chase each other in our car. She had an old 30 something, late 30s Ford pickup truck that was so light that it'd bounce off the road, slightest bump you hit. And I think at that time I don't think I had my 57 Chevy, probably a 56 Pontiac. But we were up north by the dump, coming out of the north end. Bonnie in front, dirt road at the time. Bonnie in front, me in the back. And she was probably, speeding, maybe 25 or 30 miles an hour, but it was on a narrow dirt road, not wide enough for two cars to pass sideway. And I was right behind us, so we were kicking up a lot of dust. And Mom and Dad and my grandmother,
I was in there.
Gwen was in
I
there,
saw
was
proof.
coming from the carrying place up through, and they saw this bloom of dust coming. So Dad said, better pull over because somebody was driving crazy. Well, needless to say, I came around the corner and we got stopped. Mom got out of the car,
Yeah.
out the passenger side, came around. My Bonnie, I think she'd gone already.
She probably didn't stop.
No, I don't think she stopped. My window was down. Mom came over and through the windshield. Don't you ever do that? She was pounding on me. She scared her to death. But the punishment was I was to wash dishes and stay home for 2 weeks, not drive. And that was bad. Me washing dishes.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Oh, he had to go to the bathroom every time.
And by the way, the bathroom was not a flush. We didn't get flushed until the 60s in our house. We didn't get running water. But Dad came to my rescue once again, and I think I was only grounded for about a week. Bonnie, I don't think, got any punishment. No.
Sounds right.
Yeah. Yeah. But other than punishment, no, we were really not that bad. Yeah. We're fairly well behaved kids.
Stay home from the dentist.
I did, Jane. Once. I don't know what I did. We were just talking about that this morning. I loved to go to the record hops. Just lived.
She loved to go, no matter where it was. She loved to go.
I loved to go.
Yeah.
The record hops are my thing.
Do you remember the record hops at the old Minturn school? Was you?
No, I went down to Carlisle's.
Okay.
Is that Cliff Staples?
Cliffs. I meant Cliffs. Yeah.
Yeah, remember those in the
Yeah.
garage.
Twice a week.
I'm older than
Changing
you
those
guys.
records.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she wouldn't let me go one day. And I begged, I pleaded, I cried, I did everything. She did not give in to me. And I still remember it to this day because I was so traumatized and I couldn't go to the record up. But other than that, I don't think.
Your mother was a rebel.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
was.
she was.
understood.
She was, yeah.
And she drove pretty fast.
She did.
I was friends with your mom.
Yeah.
And she told me lots of stuff.
Yeah.
And I like the story in particular from the Blue House. I guess her parents lived across the harbor or something
Yeah.
at the time.
On Steamboat Hill.
So when she wanted to go, she wouldn't start her engine. She'd get started and she'd roll down the driveway and then roll down the road so her parents wouldn't know
Yeah.
that she was going.
And she was always going somewhere.
She
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you guys have any memories of doing anything up at this pond?
The Goose Pond?
I know, you're like back, you see the pictures and the cars.
Skating.
Like, yeah,
Skating.
twenties
Skating.
and thirties and whatever. I just wondered if that tradition kept up or.
We would have been more the fifties and sixties.
Yeah, we
and-
didn't do that as much as we did up here to this pond, but my Lonnie did.
But I do have pictures of us having a community skate
Yeah.
event up at the pond. Everybody got together. Went up. Yeah,
On fire.
yeah, excuse me.
Quarry pond, goose pond, because they worked the quarry pond. But when that filled up, that kind of overtook the goose pond.
Yeah,
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 it did.
yeah. Yeah.
What about school?
What's that?
What about school?
School. Oh, yeah.
That's favorite subject.
Well, actually,
4 grades in one room.
actually,
3, I think.
Was it?
Well, not at first.
I'm gonna blame this on Greg, I think. He, I think you were still here at the time, and somebody egged me on,
Uh-oh.
because I wouldn't have done this on my own.
I think it was Bonnie.
But maybe, no, it wasn't Bonnie. The school was new and fresh and clean, it was nice and lovely, and it had urinals, which we'd never been exposed to before, we didn't even know what they were.
Right.
And the urinals had little mothball-like things in there. And somebody encouraged me to take those out of the urinals and put them in the girls' coat pockets. And I did. And I got caught. I don't know who told on me, but I got caught, and my punishment was Mrs. Anderson. She's a totalitarian
Oh,
dictator.
Didn't like boys.
Yeah,
wow.
and that particular day, I had hip boots, and I don't mean they were just hip boots like the fishermen wear. These are the ones that came up the waders. That had the belts, the clips on the side. And when I rolled them down, that little piece that came up across the hip was on the floor and rattling around. Well, she tied me to her apron strings,
Oh.
and I had to follow her around. And she would stop, I'd bump into her, she'd take off, and it was embarrassing. But it was also embarrassing the time that Linda Morrison stabbed me in the wrist with a pencil. And I still got the scar here somewhere. And then Sharon Johnson slapped me for some reason. I don't know what that was.
I had nothing.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, and what else happened at school? It wasn't bad. And we
Oh,
had good times.
Lois, my punishments, because I couldn't shut up. I was talking, whispering. Had my ponytail tied to Brenda Smith, who was shorter. Yeah. So I was like this. We were trying to walk along. Yeah. And we did that. It was a long, it wasn't just a few minutes. And the other time, she made me, I had on a pair of tight, what they call pedal pushers. And she made me stand up in front of the class, maybe in front of the door, the outside door. Put my hands on the floor. Well, I was stiff. I couldn't stand up and, but I was scooching down. But I did it. Well, that was a day that the sunbeam was coming, which you guys all know. It was a special day. What happened once a
The
month?
Sunbeam was the boat, the mailboat at the time. It ran down at the quarry wall.
And they always came to school and sang the old Get Along Little Doggy and all those songs.
I'm sorry, Gwen, the Sea Wind was the mailboat.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Not to some.
Not the Sunbeam, yeah, the Sunbeam was a
Mission.
mission.
Yeah,
boat,
that's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Somebody brought Miss Brewery.
Yes.
Yes.
No, so
She's-
Rambo. Yeah.
Seeds.
Oh,
And we'd have
Miss Brewery.
toothbrush, she always brought toothbrushes and we'd have the, what?
I think she gave us cod liver oil.
Cod liver oil tablets. So I was waiting for the superintendent, to walk through the door with my rear end stuck right in the air. Thank God he didn't come. But for the boys, made her put her earrings on the boys, made them stand around. She would put gum on their noses.
She was a miserable woman. She really was. She was a miserable woman.
She should never been allowed to treat the boys the way she did. because She left some awful scars.
I think that's
My
why
brother was one of them.
they had issues in school. didn't want to finish high school.
I had to wear her earrings in my nose.
In your nose,
Yeah.
one of those clip earrings.
Yeah, clip in my nose. And Debbie Sprague, no Spragues here. She, at Christmas time, we would draw names and swap gifts. She bought me a pair of earrings. I think you ended up with them.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had fire drill,
And atomic bomb drills.
atomic bomb drills.
Yeah,
We had to go out the windows
hide under the desks.
Yeah.
and hide under the desks if that was going to keep us alive if there was an atomic bomb, but
Yeah,
they did.
yeah. That's pretty mundane stuff, really. I mean, it wasn't the high dynamic activities going on at the school at any time.
We had to
But then
go
you
out.
had to go to high school.
We did. And Gwen and I went to Higgins. She went before I did, being the older of the two.
But you boarded off.
Higgins Classical Institute. Yeah. Yeah, and some of the kids went crossing the ferry because the ferry was daily then. But we went off to boarding school. So we actually left the island at
14.
13, 14 years old. Yeah. Came home every summer,
Once a month.
once a month, tried to. Yeah.
And as on the side, this is just because of the way the times have changed. The girls' dorm had a washer and dryer, and we had our ironing board. And we couldn't smoke, which I never did anyway, but the girls couldn't smoke. The boys' dorm did not have a washer and a dryer, but they had a smoker.
Well, we did have a washer and dryer in the kitchen
Yeah.
and the cooks, but I couldn't quite figure this out. You had the kitchen, a nice sanitary kitchen, and over in the corner you had a washer and dryer, and they did some laundry for the boys. And the boys aren't the neatest, cleanest guys. So there they were doing the laundry, dirty laundry, right there in the kitchen with preparing sandwiches. And I never really.
You had the big box
Yeah.
that you'd send home.
Yeah, I mailed mine home, as many of the kids did on the island. Did you send yours home, Spencer? Yeah. Put them in a little box, and it was cheap enough to send them to the island. And my mother did the laundry by hand. Well, she had the machine that squashed the water out of them, but hung them out on the line in the winter and got them back to me within a week's time with brownies or cookies or something in there. Yeah, but I never thanked her for.
Gwen said, I didn't get any.
No.
Yeah. But regardless of the temperature, the wind conditions or anything, that laundry came back to me.
Yeah.
Just as neat and clean and folded, and there's a little note in there with the,
It smells so good compared to the stinky socks that you, yeah.
compared to what was sent down, I cannot imagine.
That was back when the ferry run every day,
Yes, yeah, regardless of weather.
regardless of weather.
Yeah, yeah,
Henry Lee never deviated his course.
yeah. Right straight through. Yeah. I was, something that I spoke about briefly earlier, and I think I'm gonna go back to it. I'm gonna go off topic a little bit.
Okay.
I mentioned that Dad had to plow the road in the wintertime so that George Tainter could get over to the power plant. That power plant was down at the quarry wharf, and to a young kid, it was a huge monster. And it would catch on fire once in a while, the exhaust, build up carbon and so forth. The injectors and the diesel engines would get bad and just put too much raw fuel downstream, and the exhaust would catch on fire. Fire would come bellowing out of the top, sparks would come out, catch the field on fire.
Yeah.
It was a scary time. It was scary when that happened, particularly on a dry summer. We had one summer, Gwen and I was talking about this earlier. We had one summer that was very dry, and the islanders, my parents and those older, remembered the Bar Harbor fire of 1947.
Yeah.
And we'd go out on patrol at night, and ride around. I must have been 11, 12 years old, riding around just to keep Lester Kent or whoever else I was riding with at the time awake. And we had in the back, a couple of those Indian pumps. I don't know if you guys know those, but it's a 3 or 4 gallon tank of water on your back and just a plunger. I mean, most men can piss further than that, but it was enough. It was enough. What's that?
I couldn't pick like that anymore.
Agreed. But it was, it would put some sparks out of stuff, but that was how scared they were about fires on the island during that time. And the other thing that we contended with some, and unfortunately we didn't have any at our house, was chimney fires.
Oh, yeah.
That was a routine. Nordic Morrison, who lived at the time across the street from us down in Atlantic, would have one every winter.
Greenwood.
Greenwood, green wetwood. Yeah. And getting good hardwood on the island was a problem. We didn't have much back then, so everybody burned spruce, whatever they could find. And that was a lot of soot, and it would catch on fire. And we didn't do it, but I know the Morrisons would say how they'd have to go up in the attic with rags and stuff it around where the woodwork met the chimney to keep it cool. Yeah, creosote came out through, didn't want it to burn through.
Wasn't your mother part of the fire patrol
Mom,
during that time?
she might have been. She was involved in a lot of stuff. Dad certainly was. Yeah.
Marshall Island burned 2 in the 60s. I remember my brother, Jerry, going.
Yeah.
And complaining because girls couldn't go and fight the fire. I was
Right.
probably 15 or 16.
Yeah.
I remember my mother saying, well, girls just don't do those
Yeah.
things.
That's right.
Something that isn't talked about much, and it is during the 60s, was pulp cutting on the
Oh,
island. There was the pulp cutters came on probably late 50s,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
And they would cut that pulp.
St. Regis.
They brought a lot of guys on, yeah. And they would, I don't know how much per cord they paid anybody, but they would cut it, put it in 4 foot, cut it in 4 foot lengths. A cord is 4 foot by
4 by 4.
4 by 4 by 8 cord, yeah. Thank you, Miley. And they would take them down and put them on barges down off the quarry wharf and take them to the mainland and sell them. Sherman Joyce, the guy that previously owned
Sawmill.
the sawmill and Billy Banks' old house up in the field down at Atlantic. He heard some chainsaw work out back of his property, and he suspected, he'd always complained that somebody was cutting. And one day cutting on his land. So one day he went out looking for cutters on his land and never came back.
Yeah.
And he was found a day later,
Yeah.
sitting next to a
He was
tree.
old.
He was no man.
Yeah, he had dementia or Alzheimer's.
Yeah,
He froze to death.
Yeah.
He was in the middle of one.
yeah, he was. Yeah, middle of
He froze to
yeah.
death.
I didn't know
It was the mill.
Across the street.
It was, are you familiar where Billy Banks now parks his trucks? Yeah, right behind that. That building is right on top of where the sawmill was. Yeah,
My chicken house is made out of wood from there.
isn't it? Yeah, interesting. Look, from the building itself or from the wood that he cut?
I don't know.
Either way, probably the,
My mother
yeah,
got it out of Billy somehow.
yeah.
And if anybody's wondering why we have a lot of raccoons,
Mhm.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
the pulp cutters brought those buggers here.
Okay.
We never had raccoons until then.
Ah,
And they started out with a couple of skunks and
Yes.
somebody and, they'd bring workers on from Bass Harbor.
yeah.
I think Roy Joyce was the boat
Oh,
and somebody threw the skunks overboard out in the bay, but that's why we have raccoons today. We never had a raccoon on Swan.
On purpose?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So the
You-
St. Regis men lived on a float out in the
Yeah.
harbor.
Some of them did.
Yeah.
Some of them built themselves little camps.
Did they
And-
bring them out just be funny? I mean, why did they bring the raccoons out here?
I think
Just
they had an interaction with a
entertainment?
landowner.
Oh,
was spite.
Revenge or,
Oh,
okay.
so,
That's interesting because I could have sworn that I heard that Joe Staples brought the first raccoon on for hunting.
No, him and Roger brought on turkeys.
Yeah.
Turkeys, that's what, okay.
Him and Roger got
Yeah.
together and got a lot of turkeys.
Yeah.
But the raccoons came in the
Yeah.
late fifties, early sixties
Yeah.
with, what was that guy's name?
Smitty.
Smitty.
Oh, yeah,
Smitty.
yeah, yeah.
And he's the one that thought it was gonna be funny to put a couple of raccoons on Swan's Island.
Wasn't.
I was talking about Roger today at the memorial service for Hagopians, because Lidica would got Roger and me and Joe used to edge of that, used to go up the beach and shoot those buffaloes coming out over.
Yeah.
And Lidica thought we were shooting her ducks.
Oh,
And she come tearing over, and I told her, no,
Yeah.
your ducks are fine. It was pretty funny, but funny we mentioned Roger's name 2 times the same day.
Yeah. An interesting part about growing up on the island, and I wrote about this, I don't know, some of you probably read it. When once my broken arm got healed, and I ended up going in the Navy, and I came home, I needed a place to live. And I just got married, and Dad had let me stay in a little trailer that he had up near where Joe lives now. And he wanted me out so we could rent it, but he didn't say that. But he asked me where I was going to live. I said, I didn't know. He says, well, there was a bait shed that fell down. Leeson Gott's bait shed fell down on the south side of the island over in Minton. And he said he could get Malcolm Mountain to tow it around, and you could put it up in the field down in back of the house, down back where Billy Banks' house is now, down next to the shore. So that is where we lived. We towed that around. Dad took his backhoe, put it up on the beach. That's where it sat. And I wrapped it in tarred paper and put shingles on it. And my wife and I lived there every summer for about 4 years, and she dug clams and paid my way through college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's 5 foot tall and weighs 100 pounds. And she dug more clams than anybody else on the island.
Right, I can testify to that.
Yeah.
She was a digger.
No, she would, you'd be going with her, and she'd be working away, and all of a sudden she's sitting up on the shore having lunch.
Yeah,
She'd still get more than you.
she would. More than anybody, not just me, yeah.
Anybody.
And more than is like 6 bushel of clams as opposed to 4 bushel of clams.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a lot.
And it was $4.50 a bushel. That was 1972. Yeah. And
Today, look,
175,
Wow.
and is a bushel still 60 pounds, or is it 50 pounds?
bushel, 50 pounds.
Just 50 pounds, not a bushel.
I earned my airfare to France digging clams.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Couldn't do it now, Miley, huh?
No,
Number one, because
I
of,
wouldn't do it.
no, the airfare to France is not cheap anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I don't fly.
But so that's the uniqueness of living on the island, is that if you have a problem, you solve it.
Yep.
You don't, going to the mainland is not always an option. And finding a place to live, just find an old bait shed somewhere.
Did you ever get lectured by an older woman when you were a teenager, like Hester or Phoebe, or I was trying to think
No, I didn't.
who you might come in contact.
Because they were over this side of the
Who was a
island.
postmistress in Atlantic? It wasn't.
Um,
Yeah.
Ethel, but
Before
Ethel.
yeah,
Bessie Dunham.
That's it.
yeah, no,
No, okay.
no.
Well, when I was growing up, if somebody see you doing something that you shouldn't be,
Yeah,
you get the finger and
Oh,
say,
yeah.
"See, you straighten out or I'm gonna talk with your mother."
yeah, well, that happened anyhow, to a lot of people,
Yeah.
like, yeah,
I mean, today,
yeah,
people don't do that.
no.
Today you get the middle finger.
Yeah,
probably sue you if you.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Well, I can't think of anything else made it unique out here.
People, the
Good.
people.
But you have a million stories about how difficult life can be on an island, being isolated. And story that I tell, I live in upstate New York now, but I tell the story. I was born Christmas Eve, 1949, and my mother was in labor and
On the island?
on the island, and there was no, I don't know where Dr. Hunt was, but there was no doctor and no medical facility. So they had probably a telephone or ship to shore to Willie Van Horn in Southwest Harbor, who came across and in his lobster boat, and my mother had to go over to the old parsonage where the Mathesons lived.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a road that goes
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
to the shore down
Yeah.
there. And she went down there on the wharf at low tide,
In
the
labor.
steps, the old
Yeah.
wooden steps covered with seaweed and algae and all that stuff.
Yeah.
In labor, and had to
Yeah.
climb down there and get on his boat, 6 miles across the water to Bar Harbor Hospital.
And to get a ride on the other side.
Yes, yeah, that's right, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, which
Yeah.
explains a lot about me.
Yeah. Yeah, getting to the mainland, see, before we, this generation were born, the island was, and before the war, the island was a buzzing community. They had the Bardwell steamboat came over, and docked down on the Steamboat Wharf Hill.
Still here,
And,
right?
and there was a lot of activity going on, and then they took it during the war, and they left the island isolated. And it never really started to recover until they got the ferry.
Like the sea wind would come out of Bass Harbor.
Yeah. Yeah,
That was a long ways away from Ellsworth or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, see, the Bardwell came out of Rockland, which was a primary port for this island to support.
I think it went to, it left Rockland, went to
Vinyl
Vinyl,
Haven and then.
North Haven.
Yeah.
Stonington.
Stonington, yeah.
Yeah,
It must have been before they had the bridge.
yeah, yeah,
And would sleep in Swan's Island because one of them caught fire.
Yeah.
and burned
Bardwell.
Mm.
the
that's the
end of the
Bardwell.
harbor.
Yeah, yeah.
That bridge to Deer Isle was built in 39.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And the story is that they never had skunks in Deer Isle until they built that bridge. And I love to
Oh,
picture the
God.
skunks going over the bridge at night.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Tails up.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, folks. Appreciate your time.